Welcome back, Tribe. I have one here, Dr. K, on the merits of the red pill by dropping in podcast.
I don't agree with this perspective I'm about to talk about, but I'm wondering if you can speak to it, because there seems to be a camp of, I don't know if it's best to characterize them as red pill or conservative or traditional, that say that, yes, the world is changing. And rather than have boys develop emotional skills, we need to recognize that that is not really good for men to do. That's not what men ought to do. That's not how men biologically are. And what we need to do is have a society that supports more traditional gender roles where the man is always the provider. And the woman, we need to, she needs to get back into a more traditional role for women. I'm curious if you can speak to your perspective on that, because it does seem that a lot of people have identified the problem, but there's not a consensus on the solution that, we should have more space for men to investigate their emotions, be stay-at-home dads. It's,
Yeah, so I mean, I think in a weird way, this is going to sound kind of weird.
I don't know why Main Street keeps saying that we tell men to suppress their feelings. That's one of the main arguments against this entire space, is that men shouldn't have feelings, should suppress your emotions, bro. Nobody says any of that. We say men empower themselves by managing emotions, by learning how to control them, not by being emotional sissies and like crying all the time, being in your feelings and talking about everything all the time. We talk about mastering yourself, self-improvement. Those emotions are a big part of that journey and how to control them as a man. And there are certain things that men can do through physical exertion, through hardship, through brotherhood, through whatever it is, whatever crucible you decide. But there are male specific things that we have to do in order to, as men, manage the emotions in our way that benefits us. The problem is society is forcing down our throats a feminine way of talking, being in your feelings, and getting last place trophies and coddling. We're coddling boys like we coddle young girls. And then it's having disastrous effects in society today because it just does not work. We're different. We need to be brought up and raised differently. All the red pill manosphere, all this shit is saying is that in order to build the strongest men, you need to tailor life lessons and emotional management to the man himself in a male, in a masculine manner. That's it. The other side somehow makes this a conversation of, this is the patriarchy, just doing patriarchal things, suppressing men in their emotions. This is why we have all the tragedies going on in public, because men can't express emotions. It's like, no, it's not. Actually, because of the feminization of men is why all this is happening. You're not allowing men to be masculine. You're not allowing men to deal with their emotions in the physical manner that's needed.
Hey everyone, if you have a minute, please head over to legionofmen.store and grab yourself some cool merch as well. We have a bunch of limited edition designs, brand new stuff on the way, and all the proceeds go to supporting the channel. We don't want to be sponsored by corporations where we have to submit videos for review, have our speech impeded, or push any products that we don't use. So thank you so much to everybody that goes into the shop. Again, it's legionofmen.store. I'll put it up here for you guys. First time customers get a 10% off, and we have a bunch of great designs by artists from the community that watch the channel and support. They get proceeds as well, a percentage of everything that gets sold. So community funded through and through. And it's no synthetic fibers on any on our products. We're using cotton only, of course. I got your back from all those chemicals from synthetic fibers. Again, appreciate you guys. Let's continue.
So give me a chance to explain. I don't think they're wrong. So let's just, and it's like very simple. Like it's just, okay. So if there's a certain set of characteristics and the world is a certain way, let's say I'm a certain way and society is a certain way, that can work.
Yes.
And then if society changes, then either I need to change or society needs to change. It just needs to fit.
I love it.
So, if we did go back 100 years or 200 years, then men would not need to change. Right? I mean, but I'm not advocating that we should go back, but I think that their solution is theoretically viable.
Yeah.
In the sense that we could go back in time and start to develop more traditional stuff, and then men would not need emotional awareness because we didn't need it back then.
That's awesome.
See how they frame that? Emotional awareness. Like, do people even know about Stoics, old philosophers from thousands of years ago? We've had this taken care of already. This has been discussed at length by brilliant minds from civilizations past. This is not new information. The only thing that's changed is turning our men into women, feminizing our boys into girls, is treating them like they're, quote, defective girls in school. It's taking away spaces like Boy Scouts, putting men in physical endeavors, making them competitive against one another, building bonds, brotherhoods, mentorships, coming down from older men to younger generations. We've taken away everything that a man or a boy used to go through. Hence the disconnect. Hence the lashing out in society with public tragedies. Hence the insane self-delete rate. There's nothing wrong with men, emotions, masculinity. Society has destroyed all those tenets, and we're building broken boys and men. We don't need to go back 100 years. We don't need to set women back and do any of that shit. We need to empower what it means to be a man and to be traditionally masculine, because that gave men the best success in life, the most happiness, the most drive, the most ambition. And it turned them into the exact man that women constantly pined for and say, where are all the real men at? I just need a real man. I want a real man to take care of me. There's no real men left. All these man-childs today. Exactly. That's the world you built for those kinds of men. Those are the characteristics you were sowing in young boys' minds for generations, for decades now. Congratulations. You have the exact weak man you decided to build and thought was better, an upgrade. It isn't. Let men be men and let women be women. You want to be a boss babe, strong, independent queen, don't need a man? Fine. That's great. Do that. Live your life, sis. Nobody cares. Nobody's trying to hold you back 100 years. That's not the message we're pushing here. We don't want women from 100 years ago. You do you. What we want is men to be men in our traditional masculine way that we feel deep inside. We don't need society to tell us that we're broken. We don't need society to tell us that we're predators. We don't need to be told how we're holding you back and the patriarchy this. Do you and leave us alone. We want our gentlemen spaces back, boys only clubs. We want male spaces to return. We want to be able to have mentors again. We want society to look at us with some respect again. And that means allowing us to be traditionally masculine and not riding our asses about it. We don't ride your asses about what femininity means today and what a strong boss babe you are. Do you. Let us be us. Boys should be entering in competitions. They should brutally compete with one another. They should learn to master their emotions through physical feats. They should be learning how to do MMA. They should be learning how to start fires, a camp, learning how to build a shelter. They should be out there in nature, in the woods, mastering themselves. They should have mentors, older men, teaching them ways of how to be a man, what it means to be a man. It shouldn't come from a woman. It shouldn't come from a single mother broken home. It shouldn't come from the system, the government telling our kids in school what a man is, what a woman is, chopping this off, cutting those off, and leaving them broken and confused. No, that's what we don't stand for. No one gives a shit how empowered you are. But what we do care about on this side of the aisle is how broken our boys have become.
Awesome. Because are you familiar with spiral dynamics at all?
No.
It's the idea that both human consciousness and culture evolve in predictable stages. And generally, like the pinnacle, though people like the Buddha will just slingshot past it, you can go as high as the culture that you're in. So it takes you, like, one of the stages is the power stage. You think of like Conan the Barbarian. It's like, do we need men to be more emotional in the stage of tribal warlords, and should they be talking about their feelings? That's probably maladaptive, that particular stage, so that these things, that the match is so much more important than, and people can argue about which ought to change. Should we go in this direction with society, or should we? I would argue that it's an upward spiral, and that there's benefit to saying, yes, we can step into a more emotionally aware place, but I see that it could work as a traditional gender roles will go in this direction.
Yeah. So I tend to agree that moving backwards is not good. So like, just a simple example of this is that, people will sort of look at, if you look at statistics on divorce rates. So divorce rates tend to be higher in the Western world and lower in like places like India. And people will look at that and they'll say like, oh, divorce is bad, right? But what they don't sort of acknowledge are the studies that show that in a marriage in which divorce does not take place, abuse is much more common, domestic violence is much more common, sexual assault is much more common. So they sort of say that, okay, like marriage is good, but they're not really looking at the data that shows what a bad marriage looks like.
Yeah.
And people will say, okay, single parent households are destroying kids, right? Because like kids need a family unit. And there's actually good evidence to support that. If you've got...
Good. We don't need evidence to support that. That's common fucking sense. This is what's wrong with the world today. We have intellectuals and shit trying to talk about the merits of studies to prove common sense things like a child needs two parents, a mom and a dad, and preferably an extended family around them to be raised with the best possible chances at having success in life. That doesn't take a study, you turd. That's common sense. We keep citing stupid shit. Again, using examples that are extremes. Conan the Barbarian. Nobody is saying we need to go back to barbarian times and be fucking Conan warlords and killing one another. But what we can be is stoic in mentality like Marcus Aurelius, fucking emperors of Rome. People who are already thinking about the meaning of life, society, philosophical questions. Those were enlightened men that were leading empires. We don't have to go back to Conan. Again, this conversation's so dumb.
Two healthy parents who are there to care for you, the mental health of the child will generally speaking be better. But what those people also ignore is what if you have one abusive parent or one alcoholic in a particular society where, like, okay, the parents say, I'm going to divorce you because you're an alcoholic. You are actually helping the kid by removing that influence.
Yeah.
So there's just like the effects of when
Again, why do we have to like pat people on the back? Oh my God. But that one single mom did a good job. The exception is not the rule. I'm sorry. Period. We don't have to constantly half-ass conversations by saying, in general, two-parent households are better, but not all the time because, you have an alcoholic parent and that's like hell. And you would be rather in a single-parent household where you have a stable, hardworking mom. Nobody's saying that. Why do we constantly have to talk around shit like this? Is this where conversation's gone today? Because, oh my God, feelings, dude. You're going to piss people off that were born in single-parent households and had no choices, and now they were and how my mommy did a really good job. Yeah, congratulations, kid. Your mom did a good job. That's great. Thank God. Because there's 10,000 of you who are in prison, who ended up drug addicts, who are homeless on the streets, who committed violent crimes, who ended up dancing on the poles. All the worst outcomes have happened. You were the one out of thousands that made it. Congratulations. Everybody needs two parents. Period. Don't care. Oh yeah, every once in a while your parents are shit. Great. Parents tend to be shit. They're only human. Doesn't matter. Period. Two parents with an extended family is the greatest outcome for a kid. End of story. Period. I don't care about the one time the gay family raised that incredible kid that grew up to be amazing in society. Great. Exceptions to the rule. Awesome. They exist.
When people are sort of stuck in a marriage, it can actually be very damaging to kids because we're sort of assuming that those marriages are healthy, which they're not.
Yes. And there are subsets of marriage, and this seems obvious, but when people cite broad studies that can get lost, subsets of marriage that would benefit from, okay, we should stay together, work it out for the sake of the children, and others that would go, no, you guys need to split so that the children have the best chance possible and you as individuals.
Absolutely. So I tend to find that, people who are more traditionalistic, I don't disagree with their theoretical point that if you can maintain a more traditional marriage that just has two parents, I haven't seen a whole lot of data that, for example, heterosexual couples are healthier than homosexual couples or less healthy or anything like that. We just don't have a whole lot of data on that.
Yeah, just look at the rest of the world. How about that? Look at our divorce rates here versus the rest of the traditional world. And by traditional, I mean not only the nuclear family, but the extended family being involved. You're in a house with your grandparents, aunts and uncles, cousins. They're doing far better than we are. Their social fabrics are far stronger. Their traditions are outlasting ours. They don't have rampant mental disease the way we do, rampant self-deletion rates that we do, reporting unhappiness at the rates that we do. We don't need studies, data to tell us common sense shit like a strong extended family is the best outcome for a child. End of story. These people annoy the shit out of me. If you've ever traveled outside of the United States, we talk about the Philippines all the time because guys are constantly traveling there for their own reasons, cost of living, women, whatever it is. But when you see what a family truly looks like outside of the West, outside of the United States, you will be shocked how well-mannered, how down-to-earth, how psychologically stable all these people tend to be compared to us.
But generally speaking, if you've got two healthy adults in your house raising a couple of kids, that's going to be better than one adult. And so they're right there. I think just the thing is the devil's in the details, and they don't really look at the studies that show, okay, what actually happens when you force two people to stay together and there's domestic violence, there's substance use, there's physical abuse, there's sexual abuse.
Do we need studies to know that shit outcome? It probably will churn out a damaged kid. Alcohol abuse, substance abuse, sexual abuse. Oh my God, you mean your kid came out fucked up? Bro, these are we talking down to an audience here that's mentally deficient? Is that, I'm wondering, do you have to dumb down your message? Do you have to protect people's feelings in society so much today that you have to talk to them Like they have fucking eggshells for egos. They easily crumble if you don't say that special word of in general, not everybody. If you're raised with a single mother, it's not all bad. Because you tune out a vast majority of the audience when you just tell the truth and bruise somebody's ego. Is that what we're doing? Because I'm becoming more aware of the fact that people in cancel culture today and snowflakes and safe spaces and all the shit that's propping up around us, censorship, is a result of people's egos being fragile as shit. You cannot have a conversation and tell people the truth, the facts, the reality of the world without their worldview crumbling around them and shutting down. Is it like, am I the only one noticing this?
Because all that crap goes on in India and we just sort of sweep it under the rug.
Interesting. Yeah, just for a little color, I don't know if this will, the spiral dynamics, it names stages based on colors. So the one stage that they go in order, this is like the middle of it, is blue, orange, green. Blue is what you would associate with, you call it the Dark Ages or like medieval times, which is authoritarian, top-down, hierarchical, patriarchal, and that would be a more, traditional male-female relationship with rules about how things goes. Boys don't date boys. This is how it is. Then society evolved into a capitalist, mercantilistic society, which was merit. Whoever can win is the best. And that's sort of where America's center, I would say, is in this capitalist, meritocratic, win sort of mentality. And the stage that comes after that is green, which is based on multiculturalism, heart-centered, tolerance. And it seems like there is this, which direction are we going to go? But to your point that is well taken is any of them work. You can have, you need people who fit the context of their surroundings and the society. And there's been happy families, I think, always.
Yeah, so it's really fascinating because sometimes when I talk, and we've done a ton of work with like people in the manosphere and red pillars and stuff like that, and I think that they actually have a lot of like good stuff. Mm-hmm. It's just unfortunate that there's also a lot of toxicity associated with it. But one thing that I've sort of found is when people are really, really angry at society, they don't really realize that anger doesn't actually come from society. It comes from
thank you.
It comes from their experiences. So,
gosh.
For example, the number one, I've worked with a ton of people who are incels or red pillars or whatever. And the number one thing that is common amongst all of them is trauma usually associated with a woman.
Yes.
So something just incredibly traumatic and crushing happened to them. And so then what they have to do is it's sort of like, it's a survival mechanism. Their brain adapts to fear and even hate that thing, right? Like if I get bit by a snake, I'm not going to want to cuddle with snakes.
Yeah.
And then I think they really fall into traps because as you start to like intellectualize and you point at society instead of like understanding your own bias and what effect it has had on you, then you really start to screw things up because if the problem exists within you, like no amount of changing society is going to fix it.
Yes.
And I've also worked with tons of people who will carry their problems with them.
Yeah.
Right. From one relationship to the next, like relationship baggage, things like that.
I see this. This is one of the most common things that I find in any political debate, argument, whatever, is people universalize their personal experience. And it seems as an emotional defense because it is, I can talk to myself, but it is much harder to confront the issues that you have with your father than it is to confront the issues that you have with authority generally. And that was one that I bristled under any authority and daddy issues, period. And I don't mean that in a demeaning or diminutive way. I have had to work with and through them in order to see, oh my gosh, how many of my political beliefs or ways that I've lived my life or ways that I've set up relationships are coming from an inability to put the pain where it needs to be put and then to move through it in that place. Because when you put it in society and then try to fight or push society, it can feel righteous and heroic, but you will, it's perfect because you'll never win because that's not where the problem is.
Yep, right. So
in the same way you can pursue. I was
going to say the same thing. So then you're back to a ladder, right? You're fighting this uphill battle that you'll never win, and it gives you purpose and it gives you direction and things like that. And I think those battles can be worthwhile fighting.
There can be positive externalities and outcomes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think that's where usually when I'll work with like men, for example, who have very like toxic attitudes towards society, if we do some internal healing, they can still advocate for things in sort of a healthy way. You can still advocate very strongly, but you're not advocating from like a place of emotional lack of control or lack of awareness. So you can
True. They're basically talking about the red pill ragers that constantly see women as the enemy and everything instead of them also being victims, the same way their brains are being washed by narratives, by culture, by people benefiting from driving society in this direction. But there's half truths in the anger that keep it going. For example, marriage laws, child support court, etc. We don't have to beat that horse to death. It's not fair. It almost never goes in a man's way. Almost always men are in the worst receiving end. It destroys them financially, emotionally. They are unfair. There is bias in the courts. That's true. Men see that. Everybody sees that. It is unjust, and that does fuel the rage. The rest of it comes from, of course, the personal experiences, being wronged by a woman or in a relationship, whatever it is, a divorce, and then applying that feeling in general to the concept of relationships, men and women in general, how society should function. You know, like a guy that just got broken up or cheated on will go, all women are whores. All women shouldn't vote. All women should, you know what I mean? Based on his one experience with probably another broken person who came from a broken home, who had their own daddy issues, mommy issues, whatever, and applies that through the lens of everybody in general, which wouldn't be correct.
Still advocate for like male mental health, like equality for men, like reductions in male suicide, you know, things like that. But you can just sort of do it in a healthier way.
Yeah.
Any interesting comments? As for the two-parent household conversation, when they both were using exceptions to try to take down the rule that two-parent households are better than one. No one is going to say that having an extremely alcoholic parent or an abuser would be better than divorce. But the general rule that two-parent households are better for the children is well studied and played out. The exception of a minority of bad parents does not change the fact that two parents are better. Again, ends with usually. Yeah. Says the anger is well understood within red pill circles. It's called red pill rage. The whole naming things is cringy to me, but they are very self-aware people. The pandemic is responsible for creating all these shameless characters desperate for money and ready to say hilariously idiotic things. That's quite different from some OG creators that do deserve some respect. Paul Elam is a good example of it. They give you resources to work through those emotions. I understand. I don't understand why you must invalidate or ignore the worst people in that community cope with those. Don't know what he was trying to say there. That is evidence of how feminized your expectations are. This huge chunk of men of all ages are dealing with a certain way, and that should tell you something. I went to therapy for the first time when I was a child. My older brother died and my parents were trying to fix their marriage. They failed, but I was given something that later turned into a clearly feminine set of skills to cope with issues. That doesn't fix most of the problems in the male's experience. It sure does make it easier to talk to girls though. You should focus more on the validity they encapsulate. No pun intended. And then, you have a dope in the comments, the typical ones that always get called out or used as examples for painting everyone in a negative light in this space. We need government issued girlfriends, to be honest. And the next comment is literally, go touch some grass. Exactly. Are we really moving into such a soft society with brittle egos that we can't have actual conversations? We always have to say that the studies in general, not all the time, and let me know what you guys thought about some of the rants in the beginning of the video, because for some reason it's okay to empower women at the expense of men, but we can't independently empower men without bringing women down. I don't understand why that's a main conversation in society today. What do you guys think?